Yesterday, Francisco Alvarez made his 2023 debut for the Mets after the club called him up to replace Omar Narvaez, who was placed on the injured list with a medium to high grade calf strain. Regarding the anticipation of the Mets' top prospect, Buck Showalter had some interesting words, to say the least, on Alvarez's playing time at the big league level. It's kind of like a backup quarterback that gets drafted out of college. Everyone knows he's going to be a really good player, but the time he spends as a backup is very valuable too. The priority, and I think he understands it, is catching. He's going to impact the team the most there. Alvarez is 21 years old and spent most of 2022 in Double-A Binghamton before being called up to the major leagues in late September last season.
And it just screams like this team wanted to call up Michael Perez. Because, he's about the defense. Then don't call up Francisco Alvarez. If you wanted a guy where all it matters was the defense, then DFA Tommy Hunter and get Michael Perez on this roster. Because if that's what you want, has Francisco Alvarez improved defensively? Yes. Will he continue to progress defensively? We hope. Francisco Alvarez isn't giving you value defensively, even though he looked good behind the plate yesterday. He is a bat-first catcher. Like, you have a great defender in Tomas Nido. You have one of the best defensive catchers in Tomas Nido. And the fact that Buck, again, I keep saying this, but again, the kid's got to play defense first. Kind of putting the kid in a doghouse before he even showed up. Kid, if you don't prove defensively, you're not going to play. Like, no! That's not what today's managers do. When they have a young generational talent, they say, go be you. Don't be, I need you. You have to be good defense. If you're not good defensively, you're not going to play. Every other manager in today's game, let me phrase that. Managers that adapt to today's game, when you get a young generational talent, you don't tell them you need to get better on, no, play to your strengths. And then we all know the value that Alvarez is. He's a good defensive catcher now. Will he continue to get better? Yes. But the fact that Buck is already kind of like, nope, kid, if you don't play good defense, you're going to sit on the bench. Then why is he here? Like, you can find a way to DFA someone, get Michael Perez on the roster, and boom, there's your backup defensive catcher, and he can be back in Syracuse playing every day. Because I said it when he got called up last year. Whenever they made that call to him, he is the catcher. Narvaez I was okay, again, because we all thought, hey, he's going to be in Syracuse this year. Let him play in Syracuse every day. So, at this point, again, I'm not calling for Buck because, again, we're 10 games in. But I'm seeing signs I don't like, which we've said throughout all of spring training. So far, again, he's one of the better managers. But you're starting to see that old end of that Baltimore run where you're starting to see those old habits come back and not playing for today's game. So, again, hopefully he plays more than once a week, but we'll see.
As everyone knows, I was an advocate for just never signing Narvaez and just letting Alvarez catch. Because the way I look at it is that when they called him up at the end of last year, they started his clock. You said, okay, kid, we think you're ready for the big leagues. Your bat is big league ready. We're calling you up because all of our other guys on the roster can't get it done. So they call him up, and then they send him down to start off the season. So maybe that messes with your psyche a little bit. They say, oh, no, we need to sign Narvaez and put Alvarez in AAA because he needs more seasoning. He needs to spend more time. And then within a week, he's already here. So, what does he need? Because it's like we say all the time, but their actions don't match their words because they're saying, oh, he needs more seasoning, but then they're in such a rush to call him up right away as soon as Narvaez has a little minor, I would say a minor injury, but an injury that isn't going to cause him the entire season. So Alvarez never got that seasoning that he so desperately needed. And I just think that if they want him to improve defensively, this isn't the way to do it. Making him the, as they call it, backup quarterback, which I'll get to at the end because that's a terrible, terrible, terrible comparison to a backup catcher. But if you're going to have him play only a couple times a week, he's not going to be able to progress the way you want him to. The way I look at it is you're either all in or you're all out. Either Alvarez is your starting catcher, getting a majority of the playing time and getting that seasoning, getting those reps, improving defensively, adjusting more to the major league game because it's still pretty obvious he's still very green. He's still swinging at everything. He's still pressing up there. He's still super young. I mean, we saw that when he first got called up last year. He's just very excited up there. He's not, fully ready, but the only way he's going to learn is if he continues to play. So whether he has to play full-time somewhere, whether that's here or the minor leagues, he can't be kind of playing in the big leagues. I just don't think that's going to be the best development. I don't think that's going to be the best progression for him. So I don't think this is the best way to do it. Again, they need to just make a stand and be like, okay, he's our starting catcher, or he will be our starting catcher. So we're going to keep him in the minors until he is 1,000% ready. This whole half doing it, it's not going to get the job done. And a backup quarterback, like if we're taking that term literally, a backup quarterback should never, ever, ever play for you. A backup quarterback should only play when you're up by 30 or when your starting quarterback is hurt. This is not a backup quarterback. This is a catcher. I mean, you're going to have multiple catchers on every single team because no catcher plays every day. I mean, no one does it anymore. So he's going to get playing time. Your backup quarterback should never get playing time. So it was just a dumb comparison. It's not the same thing. But I just don't understand exactly what it is that they're doing. Because, again, if you want we talked about, like, he's so important because he was, the number one prospect in baseball. This year, he was a number 3, number 5, whatever. Like, you got to treat him like gold. But this isn't the best way to progress him the way they're doing it right now. So I'm kind of glad that he's here, but I just don't like the way that they're utilizing him. So I think they need to make just a much more firm decision and say exactly what their intentions are.
There was a tweet from Martino around the time when Buck Showalter said this. And he talked about basically, the entire Mets front office, they kind of rave about Tomas Nido, and they value his defense very highly. And, you really should expect Nido to be catching behind the plate a lot. Now, the thing about this that bothers me is the Mets really, and I think Mets fans, I really do agree that Nido's overall impact should definitely be recognized a lot more. But the Mets need to stop advertising Nido as a starting caliber player who would just come off the bench to back up your catcher. Nido is a great backup catcher. He's a great defensive catcher, but that's it. Like, the phrase of "we have Nido" should not be a quote used for when your starting catcher gets hurt. But the one part of this, what he said today before he made this starting thing, and he's talked about the priority, and I think he understands it, that the priority is catching. The priority is defense. If his priority was defense, if it was the priority to have him in AAA, which is what they started off this year with Narvaez and Nido in the major leagues, you would have went out and got somebody who could hit a goddamn home run over the winter. If his defense was so important, which I believe it is, defense is obviously important for the catchers. You would have gotten somebody who can hit the ball over the goddamn fence, but you didn't. You ignored power like they usually do. What the hell is he doing here? I don't know what he is doing here, to be honest. I'm going to tell you right now how they're pretty much treating this and how we're seeing this from the beginning. You might as well just call up the oldest player in AAA and add him to the roster, because it doesn't look like they want to have any piece of youth on this roster whatsoever. So what the hell is he doing here? Not to mention, we all know who should have been here first out of all the prospects. The Mets are so stubborn, and I've talked about this so many times, they make the right decision way too late. It takes so long for the right decision or the more impactful decision to actually go through and drill through the skull of the front office. And that is very frustrating to me for a win now team that's trying to win a World Series. What is Alvarez actually doing here? If we're here for just his defense and Nido is going to play 3 out of the 5 days, Francisco Alvarez has the ceiling to be a starting catcher. I don't agree that he should be in the majors right now, to be honest, but if he's going to be here, he should be the starting catcher. He should be the C1. And the fact that we're basically seeing him as an additional bench player and, not a necessity to this lineup is insane. It's kind of just how they also viewed the whole Correa thing of him being a luxury. It's just, I can't deal with this anymore, where they just like to stick with what they have. And when it doesn't work out, they still wait 4-5 months later than they should have to change the problem. It's just ridiculous how they just say that they're going to do one thing and do the other thing. At this point, if defense is so important, Michael Parrish should be up here. Do I agree with that? Is he going to supply any offense? No. We've seen what they've talked about this in spring training, where we want him to get seasoning in AAA, and his defense is what we want to see. The bat is tip top 99% ready for the major leagues. So, why is he here then? I do want to ask this to you guys. How do you guys feel about the catcher DH platoon of Vogelbach against righties, and then Alvarez against righties behind the plate? And then you also have against lefties, Alvarez is the DH, and then Nido is the catcher.
I mean, it is an idea to obviously get his bat in the lineup. And, we know Vogelbach cannot hit lefties, and the lefty DH is Tommy Pham or Mark Canha. So, I mean, we'll see where Starling Marte looks like he's not going to be out. We'll see how Marte feels in the morning. Against lefties, you could do Pham in right, Canha in left, and then have Alvarez behind at DH with Nido as the catcher. Again, his bat needs to get in the lineup any possible way. But again, that goes against the philosophy that we were told that, hey, we want him to play catcher. We don't want him at DH. So his bat needs to be in the lineup. But then they would be going back against what they said all throughout spring training is, he's not going to win the DH job against left-handed pitching because we want him to be a catcher. So at this point, I would do it just to get his bat in the lineup. But again, they've said all spring, we don't want him to be the left-handed DH. We want him to be a catcher. And then what's the first thing they would do? So I'd keep to get his bat in the lineup, yes, but we'll see if they actually would do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get the sense that they will. I think that there is obviously a big commitment to Tommy Pham. You see how much he's playing. And again, like, Tim LeCastro is starting too much too. I mean, the fact that, they have to DH Canha and have LeCastro make starts, and Nimmo needs a day off. It's hard to get, all of your best bats in the lineup at once because, then Marte comes out of the game and Guillorme's in there batting second against a lefty. There's just so many other just ridiculous things that happen throughout the course of the days that you can never get your full lineup in there, your ace lineup in there, because everybody always has something going on that you just can't have your other guys out there. And I think that you're seeing it. We saw it last year where teams kind of stacked up their left-handed starters to face the Mets, and the Mets have seen a ton of lefties in the rotation. And you look at a team like the Marlins, who have so many lefties in their bullpen that no matter what, you're always facing a lefty. So Vogelbach becomes pretty useless. I mean, he's not playing. He's not going to come in off the bench and do anything. And if Alvarez is taking up a bench spot, we've just talked about it ad nauseum at this point, but again, the lack of versatility on this team is very concerning because you just have so many guys on this roster that they don't do much. They're just very, very one-dimensional. I mean, they all draw walks. Guillorme plays good defense. LeCastro's fast. Vogelbach gets on base. Alvarez has power, but it's again, nobody does multiple things really well. So you're just kind of left with a bunch of just okay guys, which leads to this just okay offense where Alonso has to do all the heavy lifting. And Marte is the only guy that has a pulse on this team that does anything dynamic. Everybody else is singles and walks and the occasional Alonso home runs. Marte is the guy hitting doubles. He tries to steal a base. He tries to make something happen, and he almost gets killed for it. So, I mean, you just see, we talk about so much of the same kinds of players. Like you said earlier, the pace is so alarming. When you see the other teams and they steal all these bases and there's just so many more home runs being hit throughout the course of the league, everybody but the Mets. I mean, we may get to the point where Pete Alonso will hit more home runs than the rest of the team combined. If it weren't for Marte and Lindor, totally possible. That is very alarming. You can't have a bottom of the order that goes Escobar, Nido, and then Tommy Pham leading off, and LeCastro's in there too. Like you just have so many automatic outs, just one guy after another, after another, after another. It becomes that Alonso has to carry the team even more, which we thought shouldn't be possible. And again, why Correa was never a luxury. He was an absolute need, because if you're keeping Beatty in the minors, if you're keeping Alvarez in the minors, you knew all these old guys the Mets have, your Escobar, your Canna, they're only going to get worse. They're only a year older. They're not going to get better. So I just think that, the Mets, they try to keep the same team that they had last year, and you haven't seen any improvement yet. I mean, obviously it's still early, but I just don't see like where it's going to come from. Like, because we said from the beginning, if it doesn't come from Alvarez or Beatty, all these other old guys, these one-dimensional guys, it's not going to happen. I mean, they're not going to change. So Billy Epler needs to make a change, because, as like you said, this team is not going to change. Buck's not going to change. They have to go from outside to do some different things. They got to shuffle the deck a little bit here, because it is just very lethargic. It's very stagnant, and it's just not fun to watch at all. I mean, you could just see the flaws, and it's not a sustainable blueprint for success.
Like, again, just going back to just doing things later than they really should have, and they just let things ride out way too long. It's just there's still dead weight here. There just still is dead weight that also could be replaced with youth and guys who are not in their mid-30s, being, the big four that we have in Syracuse, are big three now because Alvarez is up here. But, out of all those four prospects at this point, like, I'm very close where, if we see throughout all April that this offense is not sustaining any production whatsoever, just call all four of them up, have them all four of them here at once, and just, find a way to just try and wedge all four of them into the lineup and see what you get with the youth, because nothing's going to change. Nothing will change. And even though we're 10 games in, I don't see a difference maker coming in here right now and catching fire. I don't see any guy that is struggling that is going to have a fantastic year and impact the entire lineup whatsoever and, make us one of these top 5 offenses. I don't see that happening. And I look at this offense, and if you don't have Alvarez in there every day, if Pete Alonso does not carry this team on his back, we're going for the dirt nap offensively during a game. They're done. It's over. It's just not going to happen whatsoever. Nothing is going to happen. When Alonso doesn't hit, no one else is hitting. It's not going to happen. And even though we do have good hitters, Nimmo, Marte, McNeil's a great hitter. Like, we have all overall great hitters. I just don't think that that's an approach for winning. And I'm just really, I'm upset with how I'm really upset with how this lineup is formed, whether it has Alvarez in it or not.